for introducing the Beatles to Scotland.
Twist and shout, twist and shout. Come on, come on, come on, come on, baby, now, baby.
Yes, and all that twisting and shouting and the so-called Beatlemania that accompanied them. Andy Lothian, one-time showbiz impresario of the 60s, but today he runs a more reserved financial consultancy. Andy, we're surrounded by 60s memorabilia
good,
here.
Isn't it, Frank?
It's
Yeah,
great.
it's good.
I'll tell you what, lots of people will not remember that you were the man who introduced the Beatles
I can't remember, Frank.
to Scotland. Tell me about that. How did that come about?
Well, we had the Beatles, Albert Benicio Velgan and I. We had them for 10 days in 1963, and we paid them £40 a night.
Between them?
Between them, and we lost money, Frank. We lost money. And because we wanted them back to try and make our money up, we asked Brian Epstein if he would give us them at £30 a night. Brian said no, charged us £500 a night, which is like £10,000 a night now, Frank. And we booked them, and we had them in Dundee, Kirkcaldy and Glasgow in October 1963, and we made a fortune, Frank.
So tell me, Andy, who were the other big names that you brought here to Dundee and indeed to Scotland in general?
We had almost all the big names at that time, Frank, as you probably remember. We had groups like the Hollies, we had the Dave Clark Five, we had Manfred Mann, we had Freddie and the Dreamers, all appearing at the Palais. And of course, one of the interesting things is that we also had some terrific local talent. Our main band was a band called Tommy Dean and the Tremors from Aberdeen. There was a band came down regularly from Elgin called the Copycats, and our own Johnny Hudson High Four from Dundee. And interestingly enough, a Perth band called the Vikings, who a few years later became the Average White Band in the main, and then a band from Dunfermline called the Red Hawks, and they went on to become Nazareth. So Dundee particularly, top 10 club on a Sunday night, had some fantastic names between 1963 and about 1967 or 8. Every Sunday there was a big name at the Palais, and 1,400 kids came to the Palais on a Sunday night.
Any tantrums? Not from you, but from the acts. Any difficult ones?
Oh, some good stuff. We had the Kinks, I remember, fell down the back stairs and broke some of their arms and legs and were carried off to hospital. We always had to try and separate all the young ladies from the groups, and that was difficult because there was no barrier in the Palais. It's only a foot, and the groups were kind of always in danger. But it was good fun. There wasn't the same kind of trouble, or didn't appear to be then, Frank, as there is now.
I'm looking around this table, and despite the fact you were the man who brought the Beatles, you were the man who brought so many big names to Dundee and to Scotland, no picture of you with the Beatles. Why is that?
Frank, I was a jazz man. At the age of 20, my band, the East Coast Jazzmen, we were the Scottish Jazz Band champions, and I was a purist. And at the same time as we were trying to preserve the tradition of jazz in Scotland, these upstart, these rock groups came, the Beatles with their guitars. And I regret to say, it's one of my great regrets in my life, that I held on to this kind of wonder of jazz throughout the period that year that the Beatles were big. And it was sad to say, but I felt if I was photographed with them, in some way I would be demeaning my profession.
You're a musical snob.
A musical snob, absolutely. I regret it and I apologise, and I'll never do it again.